Hello, welcome to the Maya Toolbelt. This is Michael. I recently got Maya 2017, and so I've been looking back at my old videos and seeing what has changed. And actually, I was really surprised. One thing has changed quite a lot is the combine command. Under the modeling menu set, if I go to Mesh, Combine right here, but previously Combine had no options when I originally did my video. Now there have been some options added to the combine command. There was actually options added earlier than Maya 2017. I just didn't notice them, I guess. But there have been some new options added in Maya 2017 since Maya 2016. So I think it's a good idea to do an addendum video going over combine now. So if I open up these combine options and go to edit, reset our settings, these are our default settings. We have a couple settings here. We have merge, UV sets, and then we have three options for that. Then we have a checkbox for combine skinning, which is interesting. So then we have our pivot position. We can change between either center, the last object, or the world origin. So let's go over some of these. So before I can use the combine command, I need some objects to combine. So let's go to create, polygon primitives, and let's make a cube. And we can go back there again and make a sphere. So I have a cube and a sphere here that I can combine together. So let's go back to Mesh, Combine, Options. So first we have Merge UV Sets, and by default we merge by name. So what does all that mean, a UV set? Well, let's minimize this and look at our objects. Now, polygon objects have UVs. If we go to Windows, Modeling Editors, UV Editor, and open this up, we can see the UVs of our objects. So I have the cube selected right now. So over here on the right side, you can see my cube UV set here, and my sphere UVs also when I select them. So when I select them both together, you can see my UVs are actually combined on top of each other. In order to make it a little less confusing, I'm going to right click and choose UVs over here and move the cube's UVs over here to the side. So now when I select both objects, I can see both UV shells separately. So if I want to combine now these two objects together, select my sphere, shift select my cube, go to Mesh, Combine, Options. Well, we have some Merge UV Sets options here to choose from. If I choose No Merge and then hit Apply, you'll see my cube UVs are gone. So when I select my combined object, you'll see both objects are moving together, they're combined together. The sphere UVs are still there, and I have a new UV set that has been created. So the two UV sets have not been merged together. There's map 1 and map 11, or actually what this actually is map 1 with a 1 added. That's what Maya tends to do when you have two duplicate things. It will add a 1 to the end. So it says map 11, but what it's actually meant is it's map 1, 1. So I have two UV sets now applied to the same object. Okay, so it did not merge the UV sets, it separated them in that way. So let's undo that. Okay, so now my objects are separated again. So then the next option is merge by name, and it's referring to the UV set still. So in the UV editor over here with the sphere selected, I can go under UV sets and I can see this UV set is called map 1. If I select the cube, UV sets, this one's also called map 1. So by default, an object's original UV set is referred to as map 1 in Maya. So when I choose these two objects and I have merged by name, which is the default setting by the way for the combine option, and then I hit apply, now you can see both my UV shells are visible and I have one UV set called map 1 because both map 1s of both objects have been combined together into one map 1 UV set. That makes sense? Hopefully it does. If you have any questions, again, ask them in the comments and I'll be sure to answer. But because both objects had a UV set called the same name, then merged by name, both those UV sets were merged together. Okay? Let's undo that combine now. And then the next one we have here is merged by UV links. So what is a UV link? That's a different term. If I choose that option and then hit apply right now, you'll see I have the same result as if I merged by name. And that's mainly because I don't have any UV links in this scene, and so there was nothing to compare against in order to merge. But let's go to Windows, Relationship Editors, And down here at the bottom, you see I have UV linking. And I have a couple different options here for how I want to display the UV linking. Let's just say, for example, UV centric UV linking. That's what this is, UV centric UV linking. So on the left side of the relationship editor that opens up, I have my UV sets, and I have my combined objects selected, which has one UV set referred to as map 1. And on the right, I have a list of textures in my scene. Now this is a new scene with nothing in it, so I have no textures in my scene. But if I did, they would be listed here. So I could choose a UV set of an object and link it to a texture in my scene. So if I had done this for both these objects and they had been linked to two different textures, then merged by UV links would mean it would compare the two UV links that were there, and if they were not the same, they would not merge them together. But if they were the same, then they would. So that's what merged by UV links means. If there is any UV links in your scene, in which you can control with the relationship editor here, UV centric UV linking, and you can also go texture centric UV linking or paint effects UV linking and so on. There's different kinds of UV linking you can look at, but that's what UV linking is referring to, though, is linking a UV set to a texture. So merged by UV links, it will compare the UV links that each object has if it has one, and then combine those together if they are the same. But if they're not, then it would remain separated by UV sets here. Because I don't have one in my scene, they just combine them as if it was merged by name, since they are linked to the same thing, which would be nothing, and it combined them together. So that's merging UV sets with the combine command. So after that is combine skinning. So what this is referring to is a rigged object with a skeleton. A little bit more advanced feature, talking more about animation and such. If you have an object that has a skeleton applied to it, the object, the mesh, is being driven by the skeleton using skin weights. Now if you were to then try to combine an object to the rigged skeleton object, it could mess up the rig. This option here says combine the skinning. So if your rigged object has skinning applied, which it does, and you combine this, like a cube or whatever, to that object, combining the skinning should hopefully retain that skinning information and you don't lose anything in the combine, which tended to happen in the past. Because before this option was available, if an object was rigged with a skeleton or whatnot, and then you tried to combine it with another object, it created a new object that had no skinning applied at all. So this is actually an interesting addition to the combine that was not there in versions past. So you can combine skinning and retain, hopefully, that rigging information. I say hopefully just because with rigging anyway, it seems like there's always this little thing that could happen that mess things up, but hopefully it'll work the way it should. Let me undo the combine I have here. All right, so I have my sphere and my cube separated, and now we have pivot position. This one's a bit more straightforward. By default, when you combine two objects together, the pivot point is centered between the two objects, as if I had gone to modify center pivot. However, I can choose other options for where that pivot ends up. The last object pivot position means that if I select the sphere first and shift select the cube last, pivot position last object means the cube pivot is where the pivot ends up. Or if I undo that and choose them in the opposite order, cube first, shift select sphere, apply, then now the sphere's pivot is where the pivot point remains. And then the last option here, let me undo the combine again, is world origin for the pivot position. The world origin is always where the grid intersects here at the middle, the origin of the scene, 0, 0, 0 and XYZ axis. So with the world origin selected as my pivot position and hit apply, now my pivot is way over here at the 0, 0, 0 origin of the scene, and I can use that as my pivot point. Does not matter where my objects are, the pivot point will always go to the origin with that option selected. So let me undo all that, go back to edit, reset settings. So by default, if your objects have the same UV set name, which by default the UV sets are always called map 1, so most of the time the UV sets are the same unless you have purposely added multiple UV sets to an object. You can merge by name the UV sets of your two multiple objects, and then the pivot position is always centered by default. So, lots of little additions to the combine command, especially considering originally it had no options at all. So I hope you enjoyed the video and learned a little bit more about the new features of the combine command. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.